Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast, hosted by Kristen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey y'all, welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Clark. The Collide Kids Podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. I am so glad that you're here today. Thank you for listening and spending this time with me. If this is your first time listening, I just want to remind you that we have the Kids Only segment where kids just like you get to be on the show at the end of every episode. You can be a part of that by going to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and clicking the Kids Only tab, and you can send in your favorite joke or Bible verse or a song. It's really a lot of fun. I know you're going to love it. Well, I am so excited about today's topic because I think this is something that lots of parents are dealing with and lots of families are having conversations about, and that is, how do we navigate this whole entertainment business, all the screens and media and things that we're consuming on a daily basis as a family? How do we navigate through this appropriately and in a way that honors our family and honors God? And so I'm so excited about our guests today. We have Adam Holz and Paul Asay. Adam Holz is the director of Plugged In, a resource from Focus on the Family, and Paul Asay is the editor at Plugged In. Adam and Paul have worked together nearly 15 years, helping families navigate the worlds of popular culture and technology. They are the co-editors of Plugged In's new book, Becoming a Screen Savvy Family. I think the whole family is going to learn something today. So here is my conversation with Adam Holz and Paul Asay. Well, Adam and Paul, I am so excited to have you guys on the Collide Kids podcast today.
Thanks, Kristen.
We're so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having us.
This is so fun. And I was telling you guys earlier, I think this is the first time that I've had two guests. I did have the Skit Guys on here. Do you know the Skit Guys?
Oh, wow.
They were,
I've talked to them.
They're awesome.
They're a lot of fun.
They are awesome.
They are. And they mispronounce my name a lot, which was funny. But I don't think they meant to be funny in that. But it was. Anyway, they're fun guys.
I love the Skit Guys, though. We had a chance to interview them when their movie Family came out.
Yes. Well, okay, so let's introduce our listeners to you guys because this is so fun having you guys here. Would you guys tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Adam Holz. I'm the director of Plugged In. And Plugged In is Focus on the Family's media review discernment tool. And so our goal is to give families everything they need to make a good decision regarding media and entertainment. And we want to equip you for those, sort of boots on the ground moments. But we also, in the long run, hope that as you engage with our content, that will help you to grow in just thinking of engaging with media as an area of discipleship and obedience.
I love that. Yeah. And I love Plugged In. That's such a great resource for families, for sure. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, so I'm Paul Asay. I am one of Adam's lackeys at Plugged In. And I review TV, movies. I sort of do a lot of the assigning around here. And I had the joy of editing this book that we're going to be talking about, which was actually a team collaboration. Everybody on our very small team was able to contribute to this book, which was really important to us because one of the things that we have discovered as we talk about entertainment is that very sincere Christians can have some really strong disagreements about what we see, what we like, what we even think is appropriate. And so every family
and how
draws,
we understand it.
And Adam and I have had humongously robust conversations about certain movies. and I think that those are really healthy.
Yeah.
So we wanted to sort of demonstrate kind of as in our book, sort of the diversity of voice, the diversity of opinion, and yet the unifying sense of we're all trying to get this right. We're all trying to lean into the same direction. Yeah. So that was sort of the idea. I've lived in Colorado Springs, as Adam has, for a billion years. I have 2 grown kids. do some running, do some building of Legos. That's pretty much my life.
I love it.
Yeah, and I'll say too, my wife and I got married a little bit on the later side, so my kids are a little bit younger. They're 13, 15, and 17. So we're smack in the middle of living through how do you parent with screens? How do we navigate this as a family? And I like having the credibility that comes with struggling just like everybody else. And I think I want to say here at the outset too that as we talk about some principles and some ideas that hopefully will encourage and equip people, the goal is not perfection. The goal is not to be bound up with some idea that if we don't get it right, our kids are going to be damaged forever. I think the goal is really to understand how important it is to engage with the idea and the images that our kids are seeing, and to be building relationships so that we've got a clear channel of communication with them.
Yeah, I think that's so amazing, and such good resources for families. All the parents' ears are perked up right now, because that's definitely where everybody is. Whether you have very small kids or teenagers, parents today don't know still, like, what do we do with screens, much less what do our kids do with screens. So I think this is going to be a really helpful conversation. But before we do that, because this is a show for kids, I always like to start my show by asking my guests to tell me a joke. So do you have a joke for us today?
Well, I do. I don't know if it's one that kids are going to get because it's kind of a nerdy joke, but I'll go ahead and ask it. How many surrealists does it take to change a light bulb?
How many surrealists? Ooh, I don't know.
Fish. Paul's got to see if he's got a better joke for kids than
The
that.
kids are like, what?
I know. You're like Googling, what is a surrealist?
All right, so here's my joke. What did the lamp say to the table?
Ooh, I don't know.
Hi. What did the table say to the lamp?
I don't know.
Nothing. Tables can't talk.
And it's at moments like this that I'm glad that my humor threshold is low. I love that joke. I'm going to remember it for next time.
That's good.
All right, so an extra credit joke. I just got to share
I
this.
love it.
So my son, like a lot of kids, went through this period where he did a lot of knock-knock
Yes.
jokes. He had read all the knock-knock jokes, everything. His little sister really wanted to join in. So my son would tell a joke. My daughter would come up and say, knock, knock, who's there? Apple. Apple who? Nothing, it's a joke. And then she would run away.
That's a good one. That's really good, actually. Wow. This was a fun joke segment. Thank you, guys. Okay, so let's back up just a little bit, because there might be some parents that are not familiar with Plugged In. So can you give us an idea of how families can use Plugged In as a resource?
So I think that Plugged In, we do a lot there. And probably the majority of the folks who use Plugged In come for our reviews. We review almost every single wide release movie there is. And we really detail our reviews. We talk about what's in it, what parents can expect, what they might need to worry about. But we let parents sort of make their own decisions, right? Because we know that every family will draw the line maybe a little bit different depending on how old their kids are, the sensitivities of their kids, what they feel comfortable with. Our readership runs the gamut. And so we review movies, but we review books and TV and music and video games and YouTube channels. So we've got a lot of just sort of those very pragmatic reviews. We also try to delve in a little bit deeper into some of the issues that parents are dealing with. We have a podcast that we do every week. Adam leads that podcast, and we have some deeper conversation. The Plugged In Show.
At thepluggedinshow.com.
Nice.
Very
Good plug
good.
for the Plugged In Show.
Yeah.
Years of training.
Years of training. So we do that podcast every week. We also have a blog where we're able to talk through some deeper issues. And
technology.
And technology is a huge part of what we do there. So we even have some tutorials. One of the craziest things that parents have to deal with now are these streaming services, right? So many of this content is just sort of pouring into our homes. And sometimes parents can be a little bit bewildered on how to keep that spigot at least at a lower level.
That's a good word, spigot.
Spigot. So we try to walk parents through that, through just even the parental controls, step by step, what you need to do to make that step so that your kids aren't necessarily seeing something that you wouldn't want to. Those parental controls are never a perfect way to stop problematic content from coming into your house, but we think it can be a helpful tool.
Absolutely. And I will just say too that as kids get a little bit older and more tech savvy, they learn to get around the parental controls. So you have to go back and check them to make sure they're still in place. So I think that's really helpful for families. And if you guys don't listen or go to their website ever, you're missing out because it's really helpful.
I think most reviews, which are a subjective assessment of how good a story is, how well a film is crafted, we're primarily focused on content. We want to give you as objective a sort of screenshot, if I can use that as a metaphor. We want to take a picture with our words and reviews of what you're going to find. So you can come to us and see, if your pain point is language. As Paul said, we chronicle violence and other negative elements and spiritual things. So the majority of what you'll find in our reviews is just that description of content. And we do give, an opinion on kind of how we lean, but it's very rarely do we say absolutely go, absolutely don't go. But we want to give that information for parents to use.
Another thing that I think really makes this helpful, and it's really gratifying when we hear how parents use this tool, because a lot of times parents will use it with their kids, right? Yeah. Their kids will actually say, you know what, I really want to see Guardians of the Galaxy. And the parents will say, you know what, let's check out what Plugged In says about it together. And so they sit down and they read the review. And now, I don't know whether the parents we hear from have just particularly good kids, but a lot of times the kids, the parents will say, so what do you think? Do you think that this is appropriate for you? And a lot of times the kids will say, you know what? I think I should probably wait a year before diving into this movie.
That's good.
And so when you have that...
my kids never said that. Just for the record.
Yeah. When you have that relationship, when you can sort of build that relationship, and Plugged In can be sort of a tool for that relationship, where your parents or kids are talking about entertainment together, that's where the sweet spot really is.
I love that. That's such a good idea. And like you said earlier, it's really good the way you guys lay it out to help parents navigate so they can make their own decision. You're not making the decision for them, absolutely don't watch this or thumbs up. But I think that's kind of how we navigate entertainment right now is if another person recommends it, we're going to check it out. If an influencer we follow says it's great, we want to see it. Or if there's another parent that you're friends with and they don't have the same parameters or boundaries that you might have for your kids. So it's just good to have that as a resource to kind of check out and make sure that that's something that's appropriate for your kids and their levels.
Well, and sort of related to that, this is a bit of a tangent, but we have recently begun very intentionally going back and doing older movies as well. Nice. So during the Christmas season, we did Die Hard, we did Home Alone, we did Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life. And we have found that one of the things that happens is you remember fondly movies from your childhood, but you may not remember everything that is in those movies. And I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. And it's actually a little bit shocking to go back and watch. I mean, you can just go down the list, 16 Candles, Ghostbusters, and be like, oh my. The Goonies. We tried to watch The Goonies a couple years ago. My wife picked it up in the DVD bin at checkout as, when people were still actually buying DVDs. And I said, okay, we can try. I think that we will find it has more content than you remember. And so we are actively going back and trying to hit some of those, the big movies from the 70s and 80s and 90s, and also some of the films on the American Film Institute top 100 list, so that you've got some classics or just really critically acclaimed movies. Like this week, I think we're doing... Are we going to review The Godfather this week?
We are going to review The
So
Godfather.
not family friendly, but we will be able to tell you exactly how not family friendly this classic movie is.
Well, and that's true too. Like you said, those Christmas movies or those older movies where you're like, this is fine. I watched it when I was a kid. And then you turn it on and you're like, let's watch something else. Okay. You just shocked.
Right. Die Hard is so problematic. Who knew?
I do think all the dads right now appreciate that you lumped Die Hard in with all those Christmas movies, though. So you get a thumbs up for that.
Yes. Well, we're here for the dads, too.
That's right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book, because you have a new book that's come out called Becoming a Screen Savvy Family. And I love the title. Tell us a little bit about the book and why you chose to put this together.
This was really an offshoot. We know that parents come to, as we've talked about, for our reviews. But we know that entertainment, technology, those are probably the two biggest pain points in a lot of parents' lives. They really struggle with how to deal with all the screens in their homes, how to deal with screen time, how to keep their kids off of social media 17 hours straight, how to look at this bewildering world of entertainment and technology that we live in, and how they can navigate that world safely and maybe with a little bit of joy. So that's sort of the intention behind the book. We want to bring parents into sort of our own philosophy, our own strategies on how to deal with entertainment, social media, technology, how to use it instead of having it use you. Right? Because so oftentimes we become slaves to the technology that we're a part of. We let the stories that we absorb sort of wash over us without really thinking about it. So this is really an attempt to help parents be able to be a little bit more proactive in their homes and with their family.
We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
And I will add to that, I think that different sections of the book really cover the bases in terms of really concrete, practical, and specific ideas, but also the more abstract ideas. How do we deal with worldview? So we'll talk about what happens when your screen time gets out of control. What are some practical ideas for getting a grip on that again? But we'll also talk about, what does it look like to have a conversation about the beliefs and the things that we see in entertainment, especially when they don't line up with what we believe? Does that mean we shouldn't watch them? How do we engage with those? And so our goal is to give parents a little bit of hope here. I hope that's not too lofty a goal, but it can feel overwhelming. Yeah. And we hope that this is a tool that maybe makes you feel a little bit less overwhelmed.
Yeah, and an important thing to bring up here, I think, is that we are not coming at it from the angle that entertainment and technology are bad.
Right.
You need to take these cell phones and throw them out the window. Never watch TV. Some of the most beautiful moments that I've had with my own kids have been, watching a movie together. Experiencing some of these things that we can share, playing video games together. This stuff can indeed be enriching, but you have to approach it proactively, and you have to approach it carefully for that enrichment to take place.
Absolutely. Because I think, like you said, we sometimes can be slaves to our screens and so dependent on it. Like I can't drive anywhere without my phone because I might get lost, even though I'm going to the place I go to all the time. You know what I mean? But it's still that there's a safety with having it. But then there's also that, am I on it so much? Am I so dependent on it? And so navigating that and giving the families tools, I think that's such a great goal for helping parents navigate this time. So can you give us a few of those practical ideas and some things that we could kind of keep in mind as we're navigating through this in case we don't read your book?
Right.
Just kidding.
Let's talk briefly about the idea of the reset. And I think it's actually helpful to think about our relationship with screens kind of being parallel to two other things that most of us have a love-hate, but mostly hate relationship with, and that's budgeting and dieting, right? If I want to get healthier, I have to pay attention to what I eat. If I want to be financially in a more sound place, I've got to be intentional about how we're spending our money as a family, how I'm spending it. And I think that screen time, like both of those things, like we can tend toward chaos, right? It's sort of like spilling a cup of water on the table. The water goes everywhere. And so it's okay if we have that moment of realization that, oh, we're kind of out of control here. What do we do? So a couple things. I think, first of all, we can tend to characterize this as a problem that the kids have, but our kids are probably doing whatever they see parents doing.
Yes.
And so if we want to get screen time under control in our family, it's got to start with us and start with our own boundaries and really setting those boundaries for ourselves, because I think that gives us the credibility to try to help our kids. And then I think the second thing I would say is look for a natural reset place. Maybe it can be as simple as a weekend, right? Or spring break or the beginning of summer, some time boundary where we can say, all right, we have gotten a little bit out of control here. We're going to pull back a little bit on how we're engaging with screens. And then I think as a guy, when I want to solve a problem, my natural inclination is to go look for the biggest axe in the shed to chop the tree down in one fell swoop. And I think that we can
He
approach...
edits our copy, by the way.
Right,
That
yeah.
sort of is that's sort of a kind of this philosophy for that
I like
too.
it.
Anyway.
Well, we have counseling here at Focus on the Family that you can get if my editing is too harsh. But it doesn't work with screens.
Right.
I mean, it's all fine and well and good to get fed up and say, oh, we're going to get rid of TV and cell phones and everything. Well, that's not going to happen, probably. But what we can do is look for a concrete place to make a specific measurable change where you can win. And it can be as simple as, okay, we're not going to have our smartphones at the dinner table. Like that's a starting point. For me, not picking up my cell phone and checking the news at stoplights. Like how many times have I heard, Dad, it's green.
Yes, go.
Why are people honking at me? It's so weird, right? And that, again, that's where it starts with me. Or I have tried intermittently to say when I get home at night, I'm putting my phone away for the first 2 hours that I'm home so that I can be present with my kids. And then that enables us to begin to do some of those things with them. And we have a guy that we work with, Jonathan McKee, who's written a number of things for Focus as well. And he, for a long time, did Tech-Free Tuesdays. And his kids hated it at first, but then it became their favorite day of the week. It became something they look forward to. So it's not just about deprivation, but it's that opportunity to engage relationally.
Yeah, just to echo a little bit of what Adam said, and especially on that last point. I remember when I was a kid, we lived in a very rural community, and so the power would sometimes go out. I loved it. I loved it when the power went out because I was able to connect with my parents in a way that oftentimes, even back then,
as they're rummaging through the closets looking for candles.
Well, it was just fun because you would have the candles. We would sit around. We would tell stories. We'd talk instead of being necessarily focused in on that screen. And I think that's something to keep in mind. We are built. God built us for connection.
Yeah.
He didn't build us to connect through a screen. We long for that face-to-face, eye-to-eye connection. And sometimes when you take some steps to keep your screen habits under control, that can really pay huge dividends in your family's life.
Yeah.
Now, let me just say that, and this is a little bit controversial, but I do believe that when you're talking about screen times, there's an addictive element to it. Not saying it's necessarily an addiction, but it certainly can be a compulsion.
You're addicted.
Right. Yeah. Whatever, Adam. But what you know from sort of addictive behavior, that compulsive behavior, is we fill our time with the screens. We get bored, we flip on our phones. We have a hard day at work, so we turn on the TV. What you have to think about for you and for your family is, what am I going to, if I turn off this screen, if I don't go to this screen, what am I going to fill that time with? You can't necessarily just shut it off without thinking about a little bit of a strategy to how can I use this time more productively, proactively. Take a walk with your kids, play a game, learn how to play an instrument, as goofy as that sounds. When you take away the hours upon
Paul's
hours upon
taking
hours.
trombone lessons right now.
I am actually learning Italian.
That's
I
cool.
am using, but I'm using my screen for that, so we'll cut that out. No, but you do have to sort of think about What am I going to fill that time with? How can I use this time more proactively? Because when we're talking about the average person spends more than 7 hours a day on screens. Take away a couple of those hours, how much more could you do with your life?
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're trying to do with our teenagers as they move through this time. Instead of us just imposing boundaries, saying, thus saith the parent, this is the law. It's, when you get done watching 45 minutes of TikTok videos, do you ever say, man, that was time really well spent? Now, on the flip side, after a hard day of work, it's nice to be able to look at a video and laugh. My wife has developed a strange and wonderful fixation with corgi videos. And so she's constantly, like last night, she was showing me this video of a big fat corgi puppy trying to jump in a bathtub and he couldn't make it. And it was funny. And it's fine.
It's a tragedy for the corgi puppy.
No, the corgi's going to be fine.
Man.
It's fine to be able to laugh. And sometimes actually sharing those videos, we can have a connection there. But I don't think after an hour of what I would say is cotton candy, right? It's fun to eat the cotton candy. But if you eat cotton candy all day long, you're going to feel sick because it's not nourishing.
Let me just riff on that one point, because you talk a little bit about how your wife shared this corgi video with you. That's something that I think we need to keep in mind as parents. When we are sharing the things that we are experiencing, the movies, the TikTok videos, whatever, when we can bring people into that experience, that becomes a family time. That becomes a community time. So often the screens that we have, they isolate us, they move us away from each other. When we can use screens to bring us together, that's where they're at their most powerful and most beautiful, I think.
Absolutely. And I love that you said it was cotton candy, because that's how we use screens, is incentive. So let's get this done.
Right.
Let's do this. And then even as an adult, like, all right, I'm going to read this for a couple hours, or, I'm working on school, or I'm doing different things for work. Once I finish that, I'll give myself that time. And then my tip for helping with screen addiction or whatever is to turn notifications off, because it's really easy to say, all right, we're not going to pick up our phones. And then it goes, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do, and you're like, I got to see what that is. So aside from phone calls and text messages, maybe like the little pop-ups that come up, I've turned all of those off. And that really helps me not keep picking my phone up all the time.
Well, and we know that, one of the phrases of the day is FOMO, right? The acronym, fear of missing out. And I think that even though we're laughing about it a little bit, teenagers especially, they exist in a state of perpetual FOMO of what if something happens and I am not included? And so the notification thing is huge. And I will say, a boundary worth considering pretty seriously is not letting your kids have their phones in the bedroom at night. Because, once you go to bed, you don't know if they're up till midnight texting. And that's if they're even texting things that are not problematic.
Right.
Obviously there's also, we haven't even touched on the reality that screens can be a portal to things that are really problematic. That's like almost an entirely separate conversation. Right. But just those notifications, if Johnny's friend texts him at 2:30 in the morning and the phone's next to his head, irradiating his brain, I might add, another fear, it's going to wake him up. And so just kids being interrupted by those notifications, they're probably not going to be able to have the self-control to say, it can wait till morning. It's like, no, somebody wants to talk to me right now.
Could be an emergency.
And it could be an emergency. So that's a real issue.
Yeah. And I do think you talk a little bit about keeping your phone, you always take your phone with you. Sometimes forgetting your phone at home can be a useful tool. I mean, for hundreds and hundreds of years.
You couldn't get a hold of me. I forgot my phone.
We've gotten so used to being tethered by our phones, right? And that's a wonderful thing. But sometimes I know people who, when they go to church, they leave their phones at home. And I think that's something to toy around with. The idea of not necessarily having your phones with you all the time.
Yeah.
Or only one person in the family, if you have to have it for navigation or safety purposes, one person in the family needs it, not the entire family.
Yeah, because as you say, no one knows how to read a map
That's
anymore.
right.
So it's
What if we get lost? Well, you guys, this has been so helpful and so great to talk with you today. And I love this idea of this book. I hope all of our listeners will check it out. Will you tell them where to find your podcast and your book and your reviews, all that fun stuff?
Well, you can start at pluggedin.com. That is our main website, and we're a ministry of Focus on the Family. And our podcast is thepluggedinshow.com. And again, you can find a link to that at our website as well. And
I'm always super funny on it, by the way.
Paul is not as funny as he thinks he is.
Super funny.
I, however, am absolutely even more funny than I think I am. And we also produce material for the Focus on the Family parenting page as well. So focusonthefamily.com/parenting is another place that you can find our resources as we deal with technology and trends and that sort of thing. And we've also just launched a new feature on our blog called On the Radar. And each week we're going to take 3 stories that we feel like parents need to know about and very succinctly give you kind of the so what. Why does this matter for me and for my kids? And so that is kind of a bite-sized place to come and find out what's happening in popular culture and technology that might be influencing your family.
That's great.
Pluggedin.com. It is the resource to go. Just go to pluggedin.com and we'll have so much stuff for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So what do you guys want to share with us?
Oh my goodness. Well, since we're talking about media, there was once upon a time this show that had really terrible old 1950s horror movies on it. It was called Shock Theater. It came on at 10:30 at night. All my friends in 4th grade watched it. You know, there was nothing really problematic on these shows. There was like Godzilla movies, but there was this one Godzilla movie which had King Ghidorah in it. You know, the 3-headed.
3 heads.
Yeah. So everyone was going to see it, and I talked my dad finally into saying, yes, we'll just stay up and we'll watch it together. So we stay up, and at 11 o'clock at night, my dad says, I'm going to go to bed. And here I was, 4th grade, watching this horror movie. I had to go to bed all by myself, turn off all the lights in my home. Yes, that's probably why I'm working at Plugged In today.
Thanks,
because
Dad.
you know that media can be scarring.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm going to riff on that. When I was 5 years old, there was a movie that came out. It was a documentary.
I know what you're going to
It was
tell me.
not a documentary. It was based on a book, and the movie was called Bigfoot, the Mysterious Monster.
Ooh.
And I never saw the movie. I only saw the commercial of
Yes.
big feet, plural, doing really scary things. I'm not even going to describe the scenes because I don't want to scare anybody. It wrecked my 5-year-old self so badly that I slept at the foot of my parents' bed for the next 7 years. I slept on the floor.
Wow.
And-
Worried about Bigfoot coming
and
through your window.
There was a Bigfoot coming through the window scene, and to this day, I don't like sitting with a large picture window behind me at night because you don't
You
know.
don't know if Bigfoot's
maybe
there.
Bigfoot. Hashtag maybe Bigfoot.
Yeah, this moment in Adam's life was so scarring that the first time he meets anybody, new employees, this is what he tells.
Yeah.
He tells them,
It's an important story, but I think it does illustrate. I mean, and this is the plugged in takeaway, just the power of
Yeah,
images,
absolutely.
right? And as parents, we can do our very, very best to protect our kids, and that's our responsibility. That's a good thing. I want to encourage people to do that. But sometimes things sneak in. I saw that commercial on TV maybe 2 or 3 times, and it wrecked me as a kid. I tried to go back. It's on YouTube, the whole thing. I tried to watch it a while back as like a 50-year-old man, and I had to turn it off. This is too much. I'm still strangely fascinated with Bigfoot.
But it's so true. Like, so for me, I remember walking past like the adults watching a TV show, and I wasn't even staying. I walked past it, but there was this scene where there was a snake in someone's bed. And for years, I would rip the bed sheets off the bed before I would get in even my own bed. Or if I was at someone else's house, I would rip the covers back and then I would get in bed. So just that short 10 seconds of an image, like you said, and it impacts you and it makes you do crazy things. So we have to be careful.
There could be a snake in your bed. I mean, it's important to figure that out.
Right. Well, this has been highly entertaining, and I've really enjoyed getting to meet you guys. Thank you guys so much for being on the show today.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kristen.
That was so much fun. I loved meeting Paul and Adam. They are such fun guys to talk to. They had so many great insights for parents as we are navigating through all the entertainment and streaming and technology that we have to deal with. And I already think that Plugged In is such a great resource for families because it gives you all the information about the newly released things that are out in movies and media and entertainment. But I didn't know they also provide help for parents with parental controls and understanding all the latest streaming sources and all the different things that we have to look over as we're helping our kids make wise choices about their entertainment. I love the advice that Paul gave about reading reviews together as a family, letting kids and parents to look it over and make an appropriate decision as a family. I think that's so smart and such a great way to teach our kids to use a great resource like Plugged In. And I'm so excited about their book, Becoming a Screen Savvy Family. And they want their book to be a tool that gives parents hope that you can have conversations and interactions with entertainment in a way that's still enriching for your family. And I love when they said that we are built for connection. That is how God created us, not for making connections through screens all the time. And so we really need to take the time to put our phones down, to put our screens away, to make eye contact and to connect as a family. That's so important. If you'd like more information about their book, you can head over to focusonthefamily.com. You can also check out their movie reviews and resources and their podcast at pluggedin.com. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is my friend Elizabeth.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 23.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was great. You said Psalms 23 for memory. I love that. What a great passage of scripture to have for memory. Good job. Well, if you would like to be like Elizabeth and share your favorite Bible verse or joke, or maybe you want to sing a song, you can head over to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top that says Kids Only, or you can find information about it through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod, and I would love for you to follow me there. You can also support the podcast by leaving a rating and a review or sharing this episode on your social media or with other friends that need a good podcast to listen to as a family. And anytime you think about it, I always appreciate your prayer support as well. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing week. I'm so thankful that you are listening today. Thank you for spending a little bit of your week with me. And in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so very much. Thanks for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between. And all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.